All right, what is up? Welcome in GC Live. Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, here to get you ready for South Carolina Clemson baseball and talk a little NFL Combine. Ton of Gamecocks out there, several of them going through drills and doing 40-yard dashes and all those things yesterday, then more to go as we roll into the weekend here. This is, of course, GC Live. We are, as always, presented by our guy, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com. 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. As we always tell you, if you're in the market to buy a home, whether you're a first-time home buyer or maybe you've done this several times before, either way, Clint is your guy for a mortgage here in Columbia and, of course, surrounding areas throughout South Carolina and even other states. Hit him up. Big-time Gamecock fan, huge supporter of our show, huge supporter of the Gamecocks as well. Again, 803-422-6797. Chris, it was dawning on me that we're actually going to have to soon update our thumbnail for the YouTube that pops up on the video. We've got Debo on there. Fortunately, Debo out of eligibility. Nick E., who I think, we'll talk about Nick here momentarily, going to have a good day at the draft combine, I believe. But and the third guy that's on there, Lenoris, obviously we'll probably keep him on there going into next year. But give us who your picks are for our YouTube thumbnail cover that will take the place of Debo and Nick E. moving forward. I think before we had Spencer and Juice on there, I believe were the ones before. So we'll update that here at some point very, very soon. And, man, as we knew, as we expected, busy week for South Carolina players at the Combine, just in sheer numbers. Like this is potentially, as we've also talked about, an opportunity to break the record if you're South Carolina for most Gamecocks ever drafted in one NFL draft. And so far, you look at what some of the guys did yesterday, some good times, I thought, from both D. Knight and Bam Martin Scott at the linebackers. Kyle Kennard busted out a solid time as a defensive end. And, I don't know that anything unexpected has happened yet, but also it seems like so far so good for those guys.
Yeah, so far so good, I think is a really good way to put it. And you look at, Bam Martin Scott, man, at 6'2", 231, running a 4.63, 33.5 vertical jump, 10.2 broad jump, right? Like he put up some good numbers. And I think it was interesting. We were talking the other day, and he's an older guy. I remember we had Will Helms, our former colleague at Gamecock Central, who's now doing some other stuff. We had him on the show, on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on the game. And he said, Bam Scott, maybe the only kind of check mark against him is he's an older guy. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? A lot of times NFL teams looking for youth, with certain guys. But with what he's done in college, on tape, the last season and a half, really, and his measurables and the way that he plays, and I think his versatility, he's a guy that I think we might be forgetting about a little bit in this. I am very intrigued by Nicky, man. Like what he's going to run in the 40. I think a lot of people are not just wondering if he can. It almost seems like there's an expectation, Wes, that he could go 4.3s, like it would be an absolute shock to me, really, if he's not in the 4.4s, but could we see Nicky Manwari go, like a high 4.3 range? I think he could. And then the vertical as well. I was trying to do detective work on how high he jumped on that video USC posted the other day. He was at like the very top of the vertical jump bar that they use. I couldn't tell. Were you able to find out?
No, but I mean, what's standard on those things? How high do they go? That's probably a good place to start. I mean, he hit the top one, right?
I think he hit the top one.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be off the charts. The only thing that's going to hold him back from being like the top, I would think, of his position group is just that DBs are sort of all lumped in together. So you're gonna have corners out there that are running insane times, but are probably giving up 3 inches and 30 pounds or more to Nick, I think. So you got to take that into account. But yeah, I'm curious. He's sort of, what would you say, guaranteed a 4.3 something, like that's just his expectation. Nick, who has never really shied away from expectations at all in his life. I mean, I'll never forget actually him telling Kendall Smith how Clemson was on the clock the day he signed with South Carolina. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, I don't know if he should have said that. And I mean, my man went and won twice in Death Valley during his time at South Carolina. So he's never shied away from things like that. Not going to shy away from this. And, I'm pretty curious to see what that looks like. Like I still remember the day he was at South Carolina's camp, and there are some parallels here because for those who don't know, when high school prospects come to South Carolina's camp, you are going through NFL style testing. It's a lot of, or NFL Combine style testing. It's a lot of the same exact stuff. And I remember you started to hear that little buzz. Hey, this guy from Irmo is testing off the charts. And then Beamer and Gray and all those guys were sort of watching his every move as he went through the one-on-one drill and that portion of camp. So I think for him, this is not, how sometimes guys it'll be like, well, we don't know what this guy's going to run. And then you see him show up at pro day and they're like 12 pounds lighter. And we've all seen this where they've been told, hey, you've got to run a good 40, man. And they spend what are we talking, 2-3 months leading up to it, trying to do everything they can to throw down that number. I don't think this is a case with Nick. Like, Nick can just roll out of bed and probably run an easy 4.4, maybe even faster.
Well, you remember the infamous race between him and Amarian Brown, and wasn't that a 50, or did they run a true 40?
I think we heard it was like a 50 okay. Or so.
So they ran a 50, which is obviously different than a 40. A guy like Nick with longer strides than Amarian Brown is able to make up a little bit more ground. But the point is, that was a close race, and Nick even won it, right? Amarian Brown at pro day at USC ran a 4.31. So, Nick can be in that range. And, you see guys in the 40 have like a bad day, quote unquote, in the combine where they run a little bit slower than you think they might. Or you see guys have they pull out the once in a lifetime performance and they run even faster than they've been running in training. So there's some wiggle room. And when you're talking about tenths and hundredths of, you're talking about hundredths of a second basically being the difference, there's wiggle room there. But I think he's going to run a really good time. And, I think after he does that, maybe the college football / NFL scouting world, like teams know it, right? Like teams know, okay, Nick Emmanwori's big and fast. They've seen all his film. But I think we'll probably start to see maybe more national buzz if he can turn in the type of time that he's capable of. It's going to kind of take off probably on social media. Man, look at this, the size of this guy and how he can run.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the time of year we're in right now, right? Where the athleticism scores and all that stuff takes on a mind of its own, and you do forget a little bit about what actually the on the field portion of things means and stuff like that as well. But Nick, I think is, luckily for him, he's one of those guys that's going to score well on both sides of that. Like the production has been there. He's been a starter from probably the moment he stepped on campus, or almost the moment he stepped on campus. It was about, I think, 7 or 8 plays into his true freshman year. And so production, athleticism, size, all the things you're going to need. I'm curious to see what the vibe is, Chris, coming out for our guy D Knight. And, I think he's someone we've said you've already started to get a little feel for it with some of the production stuff I saw on TV with the NFL Combine, them talking about his story a little bit, talking about the awesome cleats he was wearing and how his wife picked those out for him. And, I thought our guy Cole Kubelik, having him on the podcast and letting people get a little idea about D Knight's personality, that's probably helpful for him as well. But I imagine he's one of the guys that, as teams start to get to know him a little bit more, it maybe just helps his stock. And then it doesn't hurt that you run a 4.58. I'm trying to figure out, the NFL has these next gen stats that they put on NFL.com on everybody's profile. I'm trying to figure out, man, what it matters, like, if it actually means anything and how much stock we should put into it. But looking at it on his profile from what he's done so far, solid day in the next gen stats. Now there was some, the athleticism at that position is freakish. Like, it's insane what a lot of these guys are running. D Knight right there with them. Some guys faster, some guys slower. But I think probably, again, a solid day for him. It wasn't like a 4.4 or anything like that where people were just going insane about him on social media. But I think probably at his size, they had him at 6'2", 235. I think running that 4.58, 1.58 split, 31.5 vertical, a 9.10 broad, 7.123 cone, 4.25 20-yard shuttle, and then 22 on the bench press. A good day for D Knight.
It was a good day for him. And I'm looking over, Wes, the top time this year from Kane Medrano of UCLA was 4.46. One other guy, Eugene Asante from Auburn, was under the 4.5 mark. But, you look at, we recognize the names of some of the other guys that were at the top. Jihad Campbell from Alabama, who was a former 5-star. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, who was a really good college player. He went 4.52. But Knight was tied with Smile Mondin of Georgia with a 4.58, and that was the 7th highest mark. So still a good time for him. Bam Martin Scott, his 4.63 was, I think, right outside the top 10 for linebackers. So a pretty good day. But, the thing about D Knight, man, his numbers are good. They're certainly not poor numbers. Like, they're not average numbers. They're good numbers. And then he's going to have, like you said, the personality where teams know, all right, we've got to invest in a guy. We're spending money. We got a small roster. What type of guy are we bringing in? And they're going to be very cognizant of that. D Knight is going to check all those boxes, I think, with flying colors, and teams are going to be very comfortable with what his off the field looks like. And, just what he can bring to your team from a leadership standpoint. But Wes, it's not just about the personality and testing. Like, this guy also has tape, right? He runs pretty well straight line in a 40, but watch him on the football field too, running around. This guy can accelerate. He can move. The play that really encompasses it for me, Wes, you remember at Oklahoma when it really looked like that play. I think it was the play that Tonka ended up scooping up the ball and returning it for a touchdown. It looked like D Knight. It looked like it was fast forwarded. Like for that 1 second of the play, he just came absolutely flying in there. So really hopeful for him, man, because, you and I have chatted with him before. We've had him on the radio before. He's an awesome kid, and can't wait to see, what's next for him, frankly.
Yeah, man, for sure. A guy that really just ingrained himself in the program in his 1 year at South Carolina. And, I was actually curious to see how the two 40-yard dashes would compare, with D Knight and Bam Martin Scott. Because, Bam, this guy is a super athlete as well. And, I remember having conversations with people around the program this past summer, and they were kind of debating who in the linebacking core is faster. Is it D Knight? Is it Bam Martin Scott? Or is it J.R. Johnson? And the thought at the time was actually, and, they put the the GPS sort of thing on them, the catapult system, in order to try to measure their speed and how many miles per hour they're running. And the thought was that all three of those guys, so D-Knight, Bam, and JR, are all kind of similar athletic profiles in terms of their speed. And so D-Knight, again, 4.58, Bam, actually both these guys at fairly similar sizes, 6'2", 231 for Bam, 235 for D-Knight, a 4.58 again, and a 4.63. So yeah, I don't know about you, Chris. I haven't really asked around as much since the combine started. Looking forward to following up and seeing what some of the guys we talked to who maybe have some connections around the league are hearing on who else maybe made a name for themselves, who else maybe moved up a board, who put themselves in a good position. Have you heard or seen anything else floating around of just about guys we need to talk about or mention?
No, not lately. I mean, I was certainly planning on checking a little bit more once the combine's actually wrapped. Of course, still have pro day at USC 2 West, which might end up being an important time for some particular guys. I'm still very interested in, what happens with TJ Sanders. I think if you're looking at guys that have potential to rise up boards and a guy that's very intriguing for a lot of teams, I think TJ Sanders certainly remains one of those guys. So I think we have a pretty good sense on some. We figure Nicky's probably first guy off the board, right? But who's number two? What happens with a guy like, DeAndre Jules, for instance, who had draft buzz before he transferred from Pitt, played a final year at USC, had some injuries, right? But still turned in some quality snaps. Does a punter get drafted? And does more than one punter get drafted? If so, is it Kai Kroger? He's impressed so far. So I think a lot of very interesting storylines, which there's more to track this year, Wes, because there's so many guys that got invited to the combine, and even some guys who didn't, who may end up having pro opportunities. So I think we'll continue learning more as the combine continues, and then obviously into pro day too.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And so, all right, before we move any further, let me tell you about one of our great sponsors. It's our guy, Andy Luedecke from My Perfect Franchise. Check out myperfectfranchise.net, or just shoot Andy an email if you're interested, andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Call him as well, 404-973-9901. Here's what Andy does. So if you've been thinking about maybe business ownership, thinking about franchising, thinking about kind of getting out of your day job, or maybe even just starting a side gig, our guy Andy is here for you. What he's going to do, he's going to take sort of how much time you have to commit, how much financial resource you have to commit, and then sort of what ideas you might have for a franchise or business ownership. He's going to take all that information, he's going to gather it together, and then he is going to link you up with franchise opportunities from around the country that he thinks are a good fit for you with all that information you gave him. So then from that point forward, even better, Andy is going to help you through the process every single step of the way, because he is a business owner and franchise owner in his own right. So even more important, services for you are completely 100% free. So if you've been wanting to kind of leave the corporate rat race, or again, maybe own your own business, maybe start a side business, he's your guy. Give him a shout, 404-973-9901. Again, that's My Perfect Franchise and Andy Luedecke. Good guy. I've had the chance to chat with him several times, and kind of intriguing stuff, honestly, if you start to get into the meat of what franchising even looks like. So if that's something that piques your interest, give Andy a shout. He loves that stuff and would love to just, I'm sure, walk you through even the possibility of business ownership. So, Chris, I've been sort of dialed in a little bit to these videos that have given us a little glimpse of what's going on in winter workouts. How about our guy Malik Clark, who posted a video we believe was of him? The angle's a little bit tricky. I'd say 98% that it's Malik himself in the video. A 7-minute dead hang
Pretty good.
How long do you think you could hang up there, man?
I don't know. Since this has been a topic of discussion, you started a thread on the Insiders Forum too. I think I'm
We got
gonna
some liars on there, by the way.
Oh, big liars. I just went on there a minute ago and said, y'all got to go post video proof. If you put, I said multiple minutes. I think if you say 2 minutes or more, you have to post a video. Or you got to come back and be like, actually, guys, I just actually went and tried it and I'm a huge liar. I only got, whatever. I think I might go out and give it a try. I know you would beat me in this category. I think if I extended my arms at this point for like a long time, even if I just did this with no dead hang, I'd be like, oh, my arm hurts. I lose my range of motion as I get older.
Yeah, 7 minutes though is elite, I feel like.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
I was trying to, I did some quick Googling. If you can do 2 minutes, that's pretty, like, you're pretty fit. Like you have pretty, I don't want to say you have elite grip strength, but I think if you can do 2 minutes, you are pretty far up there.
Yeah.
And like that encompasses a lot of different aspects that are working here. For one, you have to be in good enough shape that you're not just having to hold up, a lot of weight. I was about to throw out a number, but I'm not going to.
Good idea.
You got to have not bad shoulders, right? Like if your shoulders, a lot of people get older, your shoulders are just done. You have to have great grip strength. Like that's the ultimate one too. So Malik's a young guy, freshman. So maybe he hadn't put on that 10 pounds of muscle that they're gonna put on him, in the SEC strength conditioning program. Maybe that helps you a little bit, but pretty freaking impressive. Garnet Yardbird says he doesn't think he's ever heard of anyone doing 7 minutes. Well, you have now. You've heard of Malik Clark, but yeah, I get your point, man. I think doing 1 minute for just the general population would be fairly impressive.
New goal. Right? New goal. Got to go try to get at least a minute on the dead hang. I'm going to go out to the kids' monkey bars in a little while and see what I can make happen.
I wonder if we can make this be a thing, like have Gamecock Nation posting videos of their dead hangs.
Post your dead hangs. Yeah.
I want to make our thing where we take pictures of Jack randomly just because it annoys him. I want to make that a thing too, where I think I'm going to challenge somebody on Sunday at the baseball game that if the first person to send me a photo of Jack will get some free time on the site.
Oh, easy decision.
Just to annoy Jack. But anyway, so that caught my attention. And then how about our guy, Brian Rowe, just elevating to the roof with this lefty dunk.
Yeah.
Listed at 6 foot, which we all know what it means when you're listed at 6 foot. So the ups here, man, are insane.
I'm listed at 5'10". Yeah, and
that means 5'8".
Casual, like just a casual lefty dunk. Brian Rowe's a very interesting prospect because we all know what's the listed weight to Wes, 175, something like that, 170. He actually does look bigger than in high school, but Rowe's never going to be, I don't think, 190-pound receiver. I'd be kind of surprised. Maybe in 3 or 4 years he is. But he's a smaller guy, but he just does some things athletically that you're like, that doesn't really match what you think. If you just see him, or even if you start watching his film, okay, this guy looks pretty quick. Boom, then he just goes up and skies for a ball. So he plays bigger than his size. And we had been hearing, Wes, first of all, we've heard that all the freshman receivers, the staff seems to have been impressed, and their teammates, with what they've done. Now, they're not, of course, in full pads with helmets on, out there playing actual football right now. A lot of this is based on conditioning, workouts, anything else they're allowed to do during this time. but Rowe is a name that we had heard. I think even beyond just the generality of like, yeah, all the freshman receivers look good. And I think what we saw with that dunk in the basketball game, of course, he's not playing basketball for the Gamecocks, but you see these translatable traits where he's athletic, he can get up. Very interested to see, him and really all the other freshman receivers, Malik Clark, who we were just talking about during spring football.
Yeah, and I think, man, the thing about Rowe, one little thing I heard, and this was kind of secondhand, but it was actually coming from a player initially. And so the players, there's a little bit more they can do right now in terms of like getting out there, throwing with each other, actually having a ball. And, there's all these different rules of how it's structured and what they can do, what they can't do, what the coaches can be there for and what they can't be there for. But the fact that this was coming, again, secondhand, but from a player, that they just said straight up, hey, Rowe has looked the best in terms of just playing wide receiver, like getting open, going, catching the football, and just kind of being a dynamic guy so far. And that sort of, I imagine, dated back a little bit to when those guys were able to go through practice for the bowl game, which, if you're making any type of explosive impact at that point, I mean, that's pretty impressive, actually, man. Most guys probably would have their head swimming at that point. So Rowe, funny enough, Chris, Rowe was kind of the forgotten man in this class because, like you said, a little bit smaller than the other guys for the most part, was one of the early commits. Then they started, they flipped Malik. You beat out Penn State for Lex Cyrus. You tack on Donovan Murph at the end. Lots of just more interest, I feel like, in some of those other recruiting battles. And Rowe was someone, though, that had some nice other offers early on as well. You worried a little bit about the size, but I mean, is it going to be a surprise if he, at this point, I feel like it's not going to be a surprise if he's maybe the first impact guy from this group. Now, it's too early to know. It's too early to say that. I'm just saying not going to be a surprise. And Chris, I think these guys may come along at different paces, like it could be the earliest impact guy is not even necessarily the most impactful when you look back on their career. Like it could be a different answer in terms of this just super talented group. I thought it was fascinating when we were told all the receivers have impressed. It wasn't like, oh yeah, all the receivers have impressed. It was like, man, all the receivers have impressed. It was like an emphasis on that all the newcomers have individually looked the part so far.
Yeah, a lot different than just, hey, what do you think about the linebackers? I've liked what all the linebackers have done. No, it's like, yeah, they all individually have really stood out. Emphasis added, so which is a good sign. I mean, and look, this is a class that on paper was quite highly rated. Everybody except for Jaden Sellers was a 4-star, and you could probably make a pretty good argument that he could have been a 4-star. He was extremely productive in high school. Rowe was an earlier commitment. He was also a 4-star, but for other reasons, whether it's a recruiting battle or, an in-state guy like Gidron or Murph or Jaden Sellers being the brother of Lenora Sellers, et cetera, Rowe got lost, I think, in the shuffle a little bit just from a standpoint of expecting things from him. But it seems like, at least the early returns are, he should be lumped in very much so with those other guys. And going to be a lot of competition, Wes, in spring ball at the receiver spot, just not only among the freshmen, but just generally, because Carolina's got some guys back, of course. They're bringing in this freshman class. Will be very, very interesting to see how positionally that room shakes out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also these little snippets we're getting, I'm first of all, I just kind of enjoy them because they've been giving us a little hint of some feats of athleticism, but also shows you something that I wrote about on Gamecock Central, and that is these kind of athletic based, but still for fun, not kind of within the grind of football offseason things they've been doing as a team, where they're competing in wiffle ball, they're competing in dodgeball, they're competing in basketball. And, you know, it is a competition in that there's a winner for each sport. There's a winning team for each sport. And there's going to be a winner at the end of winter workouts where, you know, you have a point system, I'm guessing is how they're doing it. But whoever has the most at the end is going to get an overall team victory for all these little mini games that they're playing, which I think is just, we've seen Beamer double down on how important team building is when you have so much roster turnover. And so I think this is a pretty cool way to do it. I'll be curious to see what other sports they do moving forward. But I'm telling you, man, the sign of athleticism we saw in dodgeball in that video as well, with the leaping split, which looked like the Saquon Barkley jumping backwards leap over somebody. I've been told allegedly was Jalewis Solomon. So,
ooh, okay,
crazy.
that was impressive. That video was well. First, you had the Enya going. Travian Robertson, good player back in his day, still looks like he could play. Doing the point, like clowning somebody, and then immediately getting pegged. That was hilarious. Yeah, I mean that was I've enjoyed the off-season videos too, and that was definitely impressive because I had the same thought, like, who was that? And you were able to find out allegedly.
Our, did you notice that Lenoris Sellers dodges dodgeballs with like the same sort of foundation that he dodges sacks?
Yes.
Like it was like he was dodging the ball, but he already had a dodgeball ready to laser somebody with. I feel like, but just the way he like found his balance, it looked just like he was avoiding like Shamar Stewart or something.
Which, by the way, guy, that even more impressive what Lenoris Sellers did to avoid that dude with what he put up at the combine. Don't let Jameis Winston's quarterback's coach watch Lenoris playing dodgeball. He's gonna have Jameis out there doing like throwing dodgeballs at him and stuff.
Hey, I could see, you know, there's something to that.
That's gonna be in your quarterback coaching regimen.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff session, do, man.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that looks like moving forward. I'm sure they got some other sports on deck. But Chris, before we get into the weekend, man, Palmetto Series is upon us. South Carolina, Clemson baseball 3-game series. One at Clemson, one in Greenville, one in Columbia. The best. I mean, I think most people actually agree on this. The best rivalry in college baseball, and it's renewed this weekend. It's been fun to see the two fan bases have a little bit more excitement that I don't know if it was quite there. It felt like last season.
Yeah, it has been. And, you know, for Carolina, a new year after, you know, you lost one game last year, like you lost 2 games, you lost the series, but you literally didn't get to play a third game last year. Had some very competitive games, and Clemson came out on top. So, you know, a new year, a new coach with Paul Maneri. You've got the added layer of having a couple guys in your lineup, including your leadoff guy, literally going to lead off the series in Clemson. Nathan Hall, he'll be up first. So just a lot of interesting little storylines. But if you even just taking those out west, this is a great rivalry. Always fun to watch this one. Should be great baseball weather, at least today. Can't wait to watch. Should be really good. I'm expecting a really close, competitive series. Maybe not as much, you know, some years, we were talking about this earlier on the radio. There's been some years where there's kind of some, maybe some extra juice, some animosity. Yes, both teams will have some extra juice, But you can tell just listening to the coaches, the players, there's a lot of mutual respect here. Both these teams are going to go out and try to basically beat the crap out of the other one. So it's going to come down, as we've said so many times, just who plays the best, right? And I think these are two pretty, from what we've seen early, evenly matched teams. So really looking forward to it.
Are you sensing, though, a little different approach from the two coaches? Like,
yeah.
Bakich didn't say, I want to punch Maneri in the face, but he also, it's kind of like I wish I had the exact quote in front of me, but it's like this is what we're working towards. Mm-hmm. And Maneri definitely went the Steve Spurrier route of, God, you guys talk about this all the time.
Yep.
Like he went more towards, like, I think for Spurrier and for Maneri, it's not that they don't care about the rivalry.
Yeah.
It is more if, for one, Maneri is 67 years old. He's won more games than any active coach in the game right now. And so he doesn't have to give lip service to anything. He can just say whatever he wants. So he doesn't have to pretend, oh, this is the most important series that's ever existed, because he thinks that's what the fans want to hear. He doesn't have to do that. All he has to do is do what he believes is the best way to get his team ready to go win the thing. And I just think he wholeheartedly believes the best way to win a series like this is to just go play loose and go play well, not because you emphasized it more than your opponent. And, I do think there's a time and place for that. Like, we've seen some coaches come in and they're like, oh, guys don't care enough about this. Let's try to emphasize something. But that's probably never going to be the problem, I think. Like, South Carolina, Clemson, the fan bases are going to make sure that the teams care about it. I think Maneri is just much more along the lines of, hey, I want my guys to just go execute. And if they do, maybe we'll win the thing. Maybe we won't. But either way, there's 10 SEC series that you're going to have to go play that are going to be equally, if not more so, important down the line.
Yeah, he definitely takes the approach of, not emphasizing the game itself, but emphasizing the preparation for the game, which I think is, there have been times, Wes, where animosity, like I think about several years ago in the Clemson-Carolina rivalry, when the Gamecocks had when the Tigers had turned the tide back. Remember, you had the 5-game winning streak for South Carolina. That didn't happen because all of a sudden South Carolina, started emphasizing the game more or started hating Clemson more in football. When Clemson took the tide back and won all those games in a row under Dabo Swinney, wasn't because they all of a sudden overemphasized it, and all those coaches talked about the importance. Dabo always talks about the importance of it, but they were just better, right? They emphasized all the things to get that result, whether it's recruiting and preparation and coaching and all that stuff. Animosity between those programs, Clemson and Carolina, in football and baseball or whatever other sport, there have been times where it's very high. There's been times where it's kind of normal, lower. The winning team, I don't think, has ever won because they've just, been more emotional or anything like that. There have been times, like I remember Ray Tanner, remember the whole bat warming incident. And at his press conference after that, when he was calling out the shenanigans, as he coined, he said, hey, I told my guys it's okay if they want to say something like during the game. He kind of, because he very much took a little bit more of a Maneri style approach, in the preparation for the game. That time he let it loose. And when you think about Paul Maneri, he's been around the game so long, as you said, Wes. He's seen types of buttons to push with different personalities. And his approach to this game has very much been, let's emphasize our preparation, go out and play the game. If we do that, we'll get a good result. And if you get a good result, then you can go and celebrate.
Yep. And if you lose the series, then you got to wear it for a few hours, but then you got to flush it. Honestly,
pick yourself back up.
Even though the fans are going to be thinking about it for probably longer than you hope the team thinks about it, because you really hope the team honestly just moves on, because baseball is just, I don't know, man. It's such a different game. It's just different. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Jack Veltri on the road right now to Clemson. He'll be bringing you coverage throughout the weekend on GamecockCentral.com. And my usual PSA I give: do not pay for ESPN Plus. You don't have to. Chris, how many ESPN Plus subscribers do you think there are that are subscribed because ESPN Plus doesn't quite make it completely clear what is ESPN Plus and what is other channels?
Probably a bunch.
So
you're saying there's a little trickeration?
I'm not saying there's trickeration. I'm just saying they're okay with there being a little bit of ambiguity in terms of what's going on. Where's this stream coming from? And
yeah, you're right.
You can watch ESPN, the page and the app, without ESPN Plus. See, Michael says, please explain. I don't want to say it's a scam because I'll get sued. So I'm not saying that, but do not pay for ESPN Plus. There's probably 2 games. The Winthrop game, the Winthrop, South Carolina baseball game was on ESPN Plus. There's maybe another one. It's always an away game where that team has the rights to stream the game. But if you have SEC Network, so if you watch the other games on regular TV, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Hulu, whatever it is, Craig says he's paying for it. If there's something on there you want to pay for, by all means, I'm not saying not to. Don't pay for ESPN Plus to watch South Carolina baseball. You don't have to. Just log in with your YouTube TV or your Hulu or whatever that is, and then you will watch the games on SEC Network Plus. That is completely different than ESPN Plus. Also, the game tonight is on ACC Network Extra, which is the streaming version for the ACC. That's kind of the equivalent of SEC Network Plus. So if you go to Watch ESPN app, go on there, log in. Pretty sure if you have SEC Network, you will have ACC Network, which means you should have that streaming, the network extra is what they call it. And it will be on there. You don't have to pay your whatever thing. Michael says you got to have a TV provider. Yeah, but you have to have a TV provider if you're going to watch SEC Network anyway. So ESPN Plus does not get you the games at all, except for the Winthrop game. That's my
very helpful. Very helpful.
Hopefully,
yes.
Hopefully. By the way, Chris, shout out to my friends over there in the USC School of Journalism. I got to be a part of their story on the South Carolina Clemson baseball rivalry this weekend. Same program I did, USC senior semester with Rick Peterson. Cool. I did this years ago. And so they were looking for somebody to talk about the game. And so I got to be on there, which was kind of like a full circle moment, which I thought was pretty cool. So shout out to them. Rick Peterson still going strong. He was the professor when I was there and is still running the show for broadcast journalism, USC senior semester. So shout out to those guys. Craig says he's going to try it. You don't have to try it, Craig. Just do it. You just trust me. I promise. Just log in. It'll work. All right, y'all. We're out of here. Weekend time. And, of course, South Carolina, Clemson, complete coverage, Gamecock Central. Appreciate y'all, as always. He is Chris. I am Wes. Shout out to Clint, our guy Clint Hammond, as always, too. We'll see y'all soon.